A real estate show like we are every Sunday at 10 for almost 15 years, I think now. Been at this a long time. And I've talked about the topic I want to lead with today. This is Andrew Duncan, the Duncan Duo team, LPT Realty, at the Duncan Duo, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. The topic I'm going to talk about today, I have talked about it before, but it's fresh on my mind because I showed property to two different celebrities this week. And it's interesting because, you know, you see the reality TV shows that sometimes they're very staged, that sometimes kind of incorporate, what happens in a real estate transaction with celebrities. And the second caveat to that is that you see things on social media, and then, what happens in reality is different than what happens in reality TV. But I do want to kind of talk to our audience a little bit because I want to explain some of the differences and the things that are unique. And when you're working with really good agents, and both the properties I showed this week, the agents on the other side were awesome. But I kind of want to give you a little bit of insight into how things operate a little bit differently. So typically in luxury real estate, a lot of the times, you're requiring a proof of funds, so if you're going to show a $5 million house, the seller may very well want to know that the buyer has the capability of qualifying. So, it may say things like, pre-approval or proof of funds required before showing is approved. And so when you're dealing with celebrities and people that are, pretty commonly known to have the money, there's a resistance because they obviously don't want that information being leaked, or they don't want that financial statement somehow getting copied or put online. The average normal person probably maybe doesn't really care if I send a proof of funds to someone to buy a property, because I do it all the time. We're constantly buying stuff, and someone leaks that. I'm not really worried about it. I'm proud that I've built what I've built. But celebrities, on the other hand, are much more private. They don't want that business out in the street. So typically you're having to disclose maybe the name of the person, or at least some sort of hint about who the person is, to the other agent to get them to say, okay, yeah, you're right, I don't need a proof of funds. So generally speaking, that's one unique caveat to working with celebrities that are known to have the money, that it's not hard to verify that they have the capability of buying the property, is that they're not going to want to provide that document. And there can be a little bit of an ego involvement too, where if their name doesn't work, then that can bother them. If for example, if someone's famous and known and on TV, or a professional athlete, and it's not hard to figure out what their contract was, and somebody's trying to force a proof of funds, that person can get very offended. It can bother them because it just can. There's a certain element involved with, I've been in the public eye. It's not hard to figure out that I have the capability of doing this. So that's one unique caveat. I think a second unique thing is that there's more hands involved in the process with some celebrities. Now, there are some celebrities and athletes that are very much involved with their money. They control their money. They still write their checks. They still look at their statements. They're very much involved in it, especially if there's some sort of financial celebrity or someone in business that's a known, entrepreneur. But in other instances, like is probably more the norm for professional athletes, they're not going to be involved in a real estate transaction that doesn't involve some of their people. They're going to have attorneys and agents, and oftentimes spouses that may manage that. So you've got a little bit more people involved in the process. In a typical real estate transaction, the buyer and seller are the ones that are going to be kind of involved with negotiating and making the decisions and answering things. And sometimes if they're younger, or first-time home buyer, a parent or relative may be assisting them, a spouse, those types of things. When you're dealing with the higher net worth celebrity that isn't involved in their money, a lot of times you're going to be communicating with other people. The celebrity or athlete may go and look at the house, and they may thumb it up, but then you're dealing with their business people, their attorneys, their agents, spouses in some instances. So it's just a lot. It's a much different process because you've got extra people looking at things. So it can cause things to sometimes take a little bit of extra time. It can cause things to be a little bit more complicated. some of the legalities and terms and privacy protections. And so, I remember at one point, and we've worked with, athletes and celebrities, numerous occasions. And I've had the instance where the attorney or the agent is asked that the original contract be, destroyed or not copied or duplicated, simply because they didn't want that turning into an eBay auction, and they definitely didn't want the knowledge slipping out about what it is that they're buying. They didn't want, someone knowing that they were thinking about buying a particular property, or they had an offer on it, or that it was even theirs. The other thing that you often see, and it's a little less common in Florida, but you'll often see celebrities or athletes buy homes either in land trusts or LLCs that don't put their name on it. They want to try and hide or set up a layer, whether it's an out-of-state LLC where you can't figure out who the managing member is, or they want to set a layer up so their privacy can be protected for at least a period of time. Much more common in Los Angeles and New York with the privacy protections than here. But one of the reasons why you don't see it as often here is because we have a homestead exemption. And our homestead exemption is unique for a couple of reasons. One, it lowers and reduces property taxes and puts caps on them. And certainly now that there's a chance of abolishment of property taxes, potentially a year or two down the line in our state. The second reason, again, if it's a primary residence, it's protected from creditors. A lot of creditors. If it's an investment property, then it can be penetrated. So you'll sometimes see, individual names. Like, for example, when Derek Jeter owned his home on Davis Island, it was in his individual name. It was part of a protection because your domicile, your homestead residence, it has property tax benefits, but then it can't be penetrated by anyone but the IRS. So for example, if you have a really expensive home and you put it in an LLC, that could potentially be pierced by a creditor. If you have a primary residence, the IRS is about the only, of course, you got to pay your property taxes, but the IRS is about the only place that can come after your primary residence. So there are a lot of people that use use those two things specifically in our state. So that's generally, unless they can, there are ways to do a trust where it can be done that way, but generally you're seeing those individual names because it is a protection on money. So they have to debate the tax treatment or the asset protection versus the property tax benefits versus the privacy. So those are a couple of other things. I think, again, the higher profile, the more higher profile the celebrity, the more, the more intricate you have to be in terms of coordinating the showing. So, for example, if someone is, relatively well known, but not something that, is going to hit TMZ, it's a little bit different than if you're, someone so highly famous that just you walking a property and being seen in a neighborhood could turn into a social media post or a news story or a TMZ post. So when you're when you're really high level celebrity, similar to going to a restaurant, you're trying to go in the back door, you're trying to go at certain times. There are periods of time where you're trying to avoid being seen. So the higher the profile, the more you have to try and set up a showing process that doesn't that keeps it private, that doesn't allow as many people to notice or see. In Tampa Bay, we're fortunate that a lot of our luxury stuff is in single family homes. So it's a lot easier to shelter that, right? You're pulling up to a driveway, you walk out, you go inside. Places like New York City, it's more challenging because a lot of times, especially if they're in Manhattan and they're looking at apartments, they're gonna walk into a place and could run into 7 people before they get to the unit that they want to see. So in places like New York City, it's not uncommon to have somebody that wants to see an apartment at an odd hour, if they're a celebrity or famous, because they want to control or minimize the number of people that could see them. So last but not least, again, depending on how high profile the celebrity is, there are plenty of them that buy vacation properties and very expensive homes that they don't even go and see in person. They're simply relying on their people and professionals they're relying on video or FaceTime, and they simply own many homes, and they simply buy one, and even choosing not to go and visit it until after they've bought it. So those are some caveats to how you work with celebrities, professional athletes. A lot more about confidentiality, more privacy protections, some extra hands kind of in that process, some extra people watching out for liability and privacy. And I think again, it's just unique. And I have run into it over the years, where you have an agent on the other side that isn't as experienced with working in that space, and or a seller that tries to force a pre-approval or a proof of funds on somebody that, look, you can look up their contract and know that they have plenty enough money to buy this property. It's clear how much they made on their last movie, or they signed a 3-year $50 million contract 2 years ago. But either they didn't know the person or didn't do their research, or they still try and hold the line on their rule of a pre-approval or proof of funds. And that can, unfortunately, with certain people, blow up the deal or cause them not to want to see it, because now they're offended that you're going to make them call their financial advisor for a statement when it's not hard to figure out that they have the money. So hopefully that's a unique insight and helpful for people out there wanting to know what it's like working with celebrities. But the one thing the last thing that I'll say is all of the celebrities and athletes that we've ever worked with have been incredible. Like there's always a stigma attached sometimes with people that get to a certain level that they're a certain way, and I've just not experienced that with the ones that we've worked with. They just have more money, they're more successful, or they're in the public eye. But they're genuinely, every single one that I've ever worked with has been just an awesome, nice, respectful person. And that goes from NBA players, NHL players, movie stars, pretty much you name it. A lot of athletes in Tampa, a lot, the wrestling crowd. We've come across all of that through the years, and really never had one single bad experience. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And we're going to be back. We're going to continue talking about the Tampa Bay real estate market after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Real Estate Show talking about the Tampa Bay real estate market. Andrew Duncan, the Duncan Duo team, LPT Realty at the Duncan Duo. I want to talk next about one of the most challenging real estate processes or transactions that we deal with, and talk to the people out there that could potentially be going through this, and it's divorce. And unfortunately, divorcing while selling real estate can be problematic for both the real estate agent and the customers. But I want to preface this by explaining that at the same time, a lot of times it makes sense to sell the property. We have sold multiple properties recently where when the couple's divorced, it was explained in a divorce document that the one spouse or the other spouse got the property and had all of the control, but they didn't actually take it out of that person's title, or they didn't pay off the mortgage because they couldn't. And that still is going to require the other person to have to be involved in selling it if they're still on the title. Even if that court decree says that they have to do it, it's causing problems. So when you're divorcing, the one thing that I want you to take a step back and think about with the property is think of it more like a business decision. There's obviously emotion that gets involved. A lot of times we see it happen where the spouse that's staying in the home and then the spouse that leaves, and there's this disdain for each other, right? I mean, look, there's a reason why they're not still married. And it causes a lot of problems because problems that get in the way of money. We've had homes where a couple is going through divorce, where one spouse is simply making emotional decisions because they want to hurt the other spouse that's also hurting their pocketbook, but they let the emotion get in the way. So, the first piece of advice that I have to every couple out there that's going through divorce while trying to sell a property is understand that you have to set aside your disinterest in the other spouse and figure out a way to work together to get the best outcome for you financially. And I have seen far too many times where the divorcing couples and their disdain for each other causes sales to fall apart or sales not to happen, and it causes them both to lose money because they can't figure out how to get along or get past the pain of whatever is being caused in the divorce. So again, best advice, do your best to think of it as a business decision and cut the cord and move on. Secondly, if you do get divorced, make sure that you understand how real estate title works. Your spouse, even with a document recording for your divorce and a settlement and an agreement that they're not going to financially benefit in the sale, okay, you're going to maintain the property, they're still on the title. That divorce decree doesn't take them off the title, okay? They still have to sign. You're still going to have to deal with them. You're still going to have to get them to sign. And unfortunately, if it's that broken, they can resist. And then you've got to go through a legal process. And then guess what? Your buyer might walk. And then you lose your sale. So the best in every possible scenario, my recommendation is refi the spouse off, pay off the mortgage, do a quick claim deed, completely get them off of the property somehow, okay? That's the best advice I can give you. If that isn't possible financially, okay, you've got to do what you can to understand to try and mend the fence. You're not going to be able to waive your divorce decree at the title agent and say, but it says here that it's my house, okay? That doesn't change the title scenario. And if they were on the original mortgage and, so again, make sure you understand that you're going to have to still have that spouse, that ex-spouse, assist you in selling. The next thing I would say is if you are an agent working with a divorcing couple, divorcing couples need to understand that the broker and the agent represent both of you, okay? Meaning that both of you have a say. So, for example, spouse A says lower the price. Spouse B has to agree. If spouse B doesn't agree, the only thing that can get us to lower that price is if either they agree or a court proceeding. So, again, the best advice I can give you with selling your home while going through divorce or post-divorce is get on the same page. Do what you can to financially get on the same page, bite your lip, mend the fence. If you want to light into them on text messages, wait until after the house is sold because they can cause a lot of problems. If you bother them and, send them a nasty gram text and then they're ticked and then they don't sign. And then the week or two that they wait causes you to lose the buyer. And then you want to it's just a domino effect. You've got to try and find a way to cooperate to get through the sale of the home. And you have to understand that the real estate broker represents both of you. Okay. Meaning that if you're both on title, you both have to agree and approve to everything that happens. So if one spouse says, I want you to do this, and the other spouse says, I want you to do this, we don't have an agreement by both sellers, meaning that we can't move forward. So if spouse A says lower the price, spouse B says no, or spouse A says raise the price, spouse B says no, we can't do anything. And it doesn't matter that you're the one that made the money, or it doesn't matter that you're the one living in the house. It matters who's on the title of the property. That's who has the authority to take action. And we have to get a commitment from both parties when both are there. We represent both. So we're stuck in the middle. It's why you'll hear real estate agents regularly joke that in addition to selling real estate, we're also therapists because we're in the middle between spouse A and spouse B that hate each other. And we've got to try and find a way to get you to cooperate in order to move the house and get the home sold. So hopefully that's helpful information for you. If you are going through divorce, I pray for you. I'm sorry. It sucks, and it sucks selling real estate when you're going through it, but hopefully those tips help you as you navigate that process. And we're going to be back, continue this conversation after a quick break here on the Duncan Duo Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Show. Andrew Duncan, the Duncan Duo team, LPT Realty at the Duncan Duo, all social channels. My team is hiring. Look, we're growing. We just launched a Realtor.com Market VIP program. increased our advertising for home sellers. We are looking to hire agents. We're looking to hire both agents to work with buyers and agents to work directly with sellers. We've never hired agents to work with sellers from the outside before, and we are opening that up because we have more opportunities than we can keep up with. So if you are interested, you can go to jointheduo.com. You can set up a career consultation on our Calendly link. You can apply at any of the open positions on there. You can also send us a DM and say, hey, I'm interested in your team. I'd love to learn more. And we'll set up a confidential consultation to disclose to you what agents are, what the expectations are, how our agents are performing, and what we expect to happen in 2026. Speaking of 2026, I believe 2026 is going to be a really good real estate year. And I've talked about this before on the show. And I want to give you kind of a forecast. If you're a buyer or you're a seller that's going to buy or move up, okay, I really want you to listen to this. Waiting is going to hurt you, okay? It's going to hurt you. Now, I may not agree with everything that's happening in monetary policy or in politics, but we have a pretty clear indication of what is going to happen in 26 for a few things. Number one, we're going to get property tax relief in Florida. Whether they get abolished or whether they get partially abolished or whether it's only for homestead or whether it's a certain price point, there's still a lot yet to be decided. But that is Governor DeSantis' legacy play. I believe it will happen. I think it is going to be on the ballot in 26, which means it happens in 27. Markets move ahead of those things, okay? Same thing with the Fed. When everybody's predicting a high probability of a Fed rate cut, Treasury bonds and mortgage rates soften because they move ahead of that actually happening. As we get closer to the date that some of that tax relief could show up, I'm telling you, the real estate market will improve. We will move people here. People will move here for that purpose, okay? Secondly, interest rates, okay? So not only do we believe that there's going to be property tax relief, okay? Very confident that interest rates are going to be much lower in 26. First off, we're on the heels of another Fed rate cut potentially next week. I think there's a high probability that happens. And in addition to that, we're going to have a new Federal Reserve governor in 26. Maybe even one or two more Fed voting governor or Fed. Yeah, so we're going to have a new chair next year and a couple more governors potentially changing over. Those people that are going to be positioned are going to have to 100% align with President Trump's monetary belief that rates need to be drastically cut. They're going to run it hot. Whether or not it's good long-term, no idea. What I can say is they're going to cut interest rates pretty dramatically. I believe we're going to see not quite COVID record-breaking interest rates, but a pretty dramatic drop in interest rates. And if you look historically at the real estate market in Tampa Bay over the last 20 years, the highest rates of appreciation were during the periods of time where we massively cut rates, the COVID era. We saw rates get really cheap and prices skyrocket. Okay, so those are two things. We know the Fed chair is going to be replaced, and we know the Fed chair is going to have to, convince and be so bullish on the market that he's going to be a rate cutter. We just know it. It's just the way it is going to be. So if we know that's coming in May, what does that mean for interest rates next year? They're coming down, okay? And when they come down, prices skyrocket, just like they did in COVID. So if you're waiting on the fence right now, if you're a seller and you're like, oh, I'm going to wait, or you're a buyer and I'm going to wait, it's a bad idea. Now, let me explain why. Because when rates drop, prices skyrocket, okay? So you might think, oh, wow, I'm going to get this great deal, okay? Well, let me explain to you. Talk to the market. Talk to your friends, okay, that overpaid for their house and got stuck, okay? The prices are going to skyrocket. You can always change your rate. You don't have the ability to change the price on your house, but you can refinance. So my recommendation, if you're on the fence, if you're one of two people right now, okay, if you are a home buyer that doesn't own property, get off the fence or it's going to get a lot more expensive, okay? The reason it's going to get a lot more expensive is because the rate drops aren't going to be as dramatic as the price increases, okay? We're going to see some rate cuts, okay? But they're not going to match how fast prices are going to rise when those rates cut. Secondly, if you're a seller, if you own a home right now and your plan is to move up, okay, get going. Don't wait, because you may think, well, the house that I own, it's worth $400 and I'm buying an $800. And I want my house from $400 to go up to $450. That sounds great to me. Okay. What do you think the $800,000 house is doing? You think it's sitting in a vacuum doing nothing? It's going to go up more. If the market appreciates at 10%, your $400,000 house went up 40. Your $800,000 that you want to buy went up 80. You lost money. Okay. So get ahead of that. Don't wait until rates start dropping even more to buy or sell. If you're a move up or you don't own a home and you're looking to buy, do it now. And then benefit from the equity run up and refinance later. And again, could there be a chance that rates don't drop as much? Yeah, of course. I mean, there's all kinds of economic things that could happen. But what I'm telling you right now is everything points towards every prediction market, poly market, which I love. If you don't know what poly market is, check it out. Every prediction market out there is telling us what's happening. President Trump has been very clear about his policies. There are a lot of efforts being put in by Director Pulte for the Federal Housing Finance Agency to improve the mortgage process and find different products to pick up the real estate market. The housing stocks, okay? This is the other thing too. Wall Street moves ahead of the market too. Look at what's happened to housing stocks in the past few months. They're all way up, okay? They're way up. Even in periods of time where the rest of the market or tech was down, housing market stocks keep getting better. It's because they know what's coming. They're getting ahead of that. They're locking in the Wall Street, who have the most expensive paid analysts in the world. Okay. They know what's coming. The boom is coming. So if you're waiting, you're going to lose. Okay. Not only are you going to get outbid and maybe not get the house that you want, but it's going to cost you more money. So my recommendation, again, if you're a move up buyer, you should look at, and you own a home, you should look at acting relatively soon. Okay. If you're a home buyer, or if you're looking to buy and you don't own a home, or you're moving here from somewhere else, you should buy. If you're a move down, it could make sense. If your equity rise may make sense to stay put, because you're going to get a financial gain on your bigger property before you move down. And the appreciation on the properties are mismatched. If you've got a 400 and you're moving down to a 200, if prices go up, your 400 goes to 440, you put more money in your pocket, and then you buy a 200 that goes up to 220. So the move down buyer would probably be the only one where I think the trends and alignment make financial sense to potentially wait and see how this plays out. Everyone else, I think, loses if they don't. Now, again, there are a lot of things that could have a local impact on our real estate market that could change this. Of course, if there's a terror attack or a world war, of course, if we get hit next year with a major hurricane in the middle of the summer, those are things that could throw a wrench in this. So real estate is the slowest moving market in the world because it just doesn't escalate. It doesn't increase and drop the same way crypto or the stock market does. Crypto and the stock market are very volatile and emotional. They can drop. You can see a stock drop 5 or 10% in a day, even more. I know a stock that dropped 40% in a day. Okay. Housing doesn't do that without an external force. The only way the value of a home drops 40% is if it gets destroyed or wiped out from a storm. Besides those things, real estate is really slow moving, but we know these things are coming. They're not coming next week. Okay. So you got some time. They're not coming next week or even next month, but they're coming. Okay. So it's much different. And the last thing I want to leave you with before we get to the break, I get this question a lot from people, and it's the political climate that we're in right now. We're going to move people here. We're going to see population growth again. That's also a contributing factor why I think we're going to have a boom in 26. But again, real estate is the slowest moving market in the world. People have to understand that. Mamdani in New York, I'm getting calls from people. Well, now that he's elected, my house value is going to go up. Your house value is probably going to go up, okay, just because of all the factors that I think are in place. But it always also depends on what you plan to buy. It's going to go up too, okay? So again, like I said, the only person that it really makes sense to wait for prices to go up would be the move down buyer. But let me talk about the political climate a little bit and explain this to people. Just because he was elected doesn't mean people are suddenly moving here. Okay. Like I had a call this week with somebody who was like, all these rich people are going to move here now. Do you think rich people can just up and move their families? They got kids, they got jobs, they got companies. It takes a while. Okay. It's going to take a long time. People that live in New York love New York. It's going to take him doing some stuff. Okay. Politicians have a lot of promises. Whether or not they actually get any of these things done that get them elected is a whole other argument. He's going to have to do some of those things, and there's going to have to be some negative impact first before you start seeing the needle move. And then when you do start seeing the needle move, it takes time. People have to sell their home up there. They've got to come and look. So is it going to have an instantaneous impact on real estate values? No. Could it have a long-term trail? Possibly. It might. But again, it depends. If someone loves living in New York, until things start changing or happening or policies actually get passed, the guy's not even inaugurated yet. Okay. So just understand that, again, when I talk to people that try and compare, the stock market or crypto to real estate values, they're so incomparable, completely not comparable at all. They don't operate the same way. They don't operate from the same status. You don't use your Google stock. Okay. You use your house. Okay. You got to move your family. You don't have to when you're pushing a button. It just doesn't move the same way. So you have to take away your thoughts about how certain announcements or decisions might impact a financial market or a stock or crypto, for example, and understand that real estate just doesn't work that way. It is a very slow moving market. Now, do I think there will be some positive impact from some of the things in New York? Possibly. Again, like that means I believe that politicians do what they say they're going to do. Some do, some don't. So possibly some positive impact a year down the line, by the time people get through the holidays and decide to look in the spring and summer and buy something and move. Of course, there's a possibility. But again, your home isn't instantly valuable overnight. Real estate is very slow moving. We're going to be back after a quick break, continuing the conversation, wrap up our last segment here on the Duncan Duo Real Estate Show. So we're back here on the Duncan Duo Show talking about the Tampa Bay real estate market. Andrew Duncan, the Duncan Duo team, LPT Realty. I want to talk about AI really quick. And when I say AI, I'm talking about large language models. I'm talking about the ChatGPTs, which is obviously the most well known. I'm a Grok person. I'm an Elon fan. I use Grok every single day. I'm a highest subscriber on Grok. There's Anthropic. There's Claude. There's a bunch of different ones, right? Google's got one, Gemini. So AI, however, is massively changing how real estate works. And I think there are a lot of consumers out there that don't quite realize how much information is at people's fingertips. I had a call the other day with a customer, and I asked them how much they owed. And they were resistant to telling me. And the first thing I told them was like, look, I can click like one button and figure it out. Like, I'm just asking you to see if you know, or how much you owe, so I can help guide you the right way. You're not gatekeeping information. Like the premise that you're going to gatekeep information. Similarly, like real estate agents use an app called Forewarn. The National Association of Realtors, Florida Association of Realtors provides it to us, and Forewarn allows us to run a mini background check on somebody because there have been enough realtor attacks and murders and assaults that real estate agents have been able to, now be allotted this opportunity to determine if the person they're going to go show a home to on Friday night at 8:00 is, a repeat criminal. Okay. So, this premise that you're going to gatekeep information is over. So if a real estate agent is asking you what you owe, they're wanting to know if you know what you owe. And they're simply just wanting to save the hassle of having to go onto AI or Forewarn or one of these data providers and click a button, because you're not gatekeeping information anymore. Similarly, with a click of a button, people can figure out who owns the home next door, what you owe, what they owe. Are any of them predators? Do any of them have crimes? AI is moving so fast, and data information is moving so fast, especially in Florida, because we are a public state, meaning that that information is publicly available. Property appraiser sites, Hillsborough, county clerk sites. It is moving so fast that if you aren't using it, or if you're not paying attention to it, the world is going to pass you up, and you're not going to realize how much information is available to people. So, things like, when a real estate agent's asking you what you owe on your mortgage and you don't want to share it, or you don't want your home value put on Zillow, or like any attempts to gatekeep information from people just are not going to be successful today. They're not going to be successful because the agents and the consumers can get the information. I had somebody not long ago say, well, I want to put my house on the market, but I'm really private and I don't want the address. So can you market my home and not put the address? I said no, because it's just stupid. Like, it's stupid. Number one, someone wants to know the address. They want to be able to look at it. Number two, even if you try and just tell them pinpoint a location, you think that they're not going to figure out the address? Like, it is impossible to think that this information, you can withhold it from people. It is available. It is there. You're not gatekeeping information today. AI has basically replaced the people even need to spend time searching. You can literally give the task to ask AI to find this information, and it will find it. And if you're not using it, and you're not looking up stuff about yourself, or you're not looking up stuff about your home so that you know what you're working with, consumers are going to have a leg up on you. Agents are going to have a leg up on you. They're going to know. I had somebody that came in and they wanted to sell their house, and they didn't want to tell us what they owed. And the reason they didn't want to tell us what they owed is because they owed more on it than it was worth. And I don't know if they just thought that magically, we were going to find somebody to overpay for the house, but it's worth what it's worth. But yeah, you can't gatekeep information anymore. AI is changing the game there. The last thing I want to say before we get to the end of today's show, I get this a lot too. When someone is wanting to sell their home for what they owe or what they have in it, the market doesn't care. Market doesn't care what you owe. Market doesn't care about your situation. The market doesn't care how much money you spent on the kitchen. The market cares what the market says it's worth, period. And if you expect that you're in today's day and age of data availability and the ability for AI to find out information, if you expect that you're going to be able to sell a home for considerably more than it's worth to cover your mortgage, it's just not real. It's just not happening. Okay. It's just not. You're not going to find somebody, no matter how much money they are, to overpay for your house. I had a call this week with somebody that had like a $2 million house in Pinellas County, and they owed 2.4. It's worth like $2 million. It was an area that got hit bad by the storms. I said, well, can't you find a rich guy from Canada or Europe that would love a property like this? Well, you think they're not going to, of course, maybe they would love a property like this, but you think they're going to overpay? Just because they have money doesn't mean they're stupid. Just because they have the availability to overpay doesn't mean they will. No one's going to do that. They're going to, and if they love the area, then they're going to they're going to like your home and then realize it's way overpriced because they're going to look it up. They're going to do the research. No one that's buying a $2 million house isn't doing some due diligence to determine the value. It just, this premise that you can hide the data or you can trick the data, it's just over. Like, AI has changed the game. You're not going to sell your house to somebody that has money. They're not going to overpay you for your house because they have money. That's the reason they have money. So again, know the data on your house, know what AI spits out, do some of your own research. It's part of your due diligence, and understand that you're not going to be able to hide the information anymore. It's just not possible in our state. And it's not possible with how advanced all of the large language models and AI are getting. So thank you so much for tuning in. When we aren't on air again, at The Duncan Duo, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, jointheduo.com if you're thinking about joining a high-producing, massively successful real estate team for a couple of decades here in Tampa Bay. We're going into growth mode in 2026, and I would love to have some more agents join our team. Agents that want to work exclusively with buyers, agents that want to work with sellers, agents that want to work both, We're looking to grow, so you can go to jointheduo.com and have an awesome rest of your weekend, Tampa Bay.